Hi everyone, I'm Sandra Smizer, Superintendent of Schools for the Poudre School District. Earlier in the school year, I laid out a vision for our work here in PSD, a roadmap for student success that encompasses key benchmarks as well as systems and supports that give our kids the best possible opportunities for learning. It's not a static vision, but rather a dynamic process that is designed to match the ever-changing needs of students to the world around them. That's why I chose a wheel to represent a student's journey through PSD. I call this our Vision in Motion, which centers around students and teachers and encompasses PSD's new instructional framework, educator effectiveness, and all the essential supports that keep the wheel intact as we seek to educate every child, every day. Today, I'm excited to present what I truly believe to be our core work, developing high-quality instruction for all students. The standards-based teaching and learning framework is at the center of our wheel. It's learning-focused, and all our efforts support this essential work. This instructional framework is grounded in solid educational research and incorporates contributions from community stakeholders, including parents, students, and administrators. Think of the framework as a common set of expectations about what a PSD classroom will look like and feel like: curriculum, classroom culture, student engagement, assessments for student learning, and most importantly, purpose. Let's join our esteemed panel today for a closer look at how these 5 key instructional concepts support PSD's mission of educating every child, every day.
Welcome to this session of Leading and Learning. I'm Jan Borman, Executive Director of Student Achievement and Professional Development. Today, we are going to be exploring another important component of Vision in Motion, PSD's standards-based teaching learning framework. This framework serves as a tool to communicate our common expectations and priorities in Poudre School District. We have an excellent group of guests that were part of the development of our teaching learning framework, here to share with us today.
I'm Catherine Thompson, teacher at Laurel Elementary School of Arts and Technology.
And Kate Canine, Professional Development Specialist.
And Sandy Bickle, Principal at Weber Middle School.
Todd Lambert, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Schools here in PSD.
PSD has always had a long history of high academic standards and success in all of our schools. So why embark on a teaching learning framework? Todd, as co-chair of the task force, could you answer that for us?
Yeah, sure. Jen, this work really began in the fall of 2010 when Poudre School District participated in what is called a CATIE review. CATIE is an acronym for Comprehensive Appraisal for District Improvement. And what that really is an opportunity for school districts to have an external review. Trained external reviewers come in and they look for ways to improve your processes and your practices. And of course, with that comes some findings, some suggestions and opportunities for improvement. And among those findings was the question that came back to us: in such a large site-based school district, what are your common expectations for teaching and learning? Gave us a pause there. It was a great question in our district. And to help answer that question, a task force was created. And that task force was made up of teachers, administrators, parents, and community members, all coming together with the idea to help us improve our learning system.
Several months into the process, as a task force, we also asked ourselves the question, would a framework truly reflect and then direct our work? Because since standards have been around since 2001, many departments had been doing fine work already in developing scope and sequence and making sure our curriculum was aligned to standards, and there were pockets of excellence across our district. We knew that. We have great people in the district who are working hard. So the question was, will that same work be able to continue within this framework, but it can also direct it so that we end up with a common viable curriculum across the entire system? And can we have those content areas all aligned with standards? Can we agree on what and how we need to teach and how kids need to learn? Could this overarching framework have some common language so we all talk the same language. We have fabulous people in the district, but we're all differently trained. We've come from different schools of education, different states, different countries. And so what could we have that would help us be together in that so that we would have a more consistent teaching learning experience from room to room and school to school in Poudre School District? We're very excited when we figured out we could easily connect it to the Center of Educational Leadership's 5 dimensions of teaching and learning, which we were already beginning to work with. And so out of that came this framework that now does direct our work.
And as you mentioned, Sandy, I'm just going to reiterate what you said about this district being exceptional and that we have wonderful people in the district and great things going on within the district. But as a teacher in the district, it's nice for me to know that there is something, a framework that provides common expectations, common language across the district, and that, you know, I know that all teachers are working from the same standpoint, the same framework. And not only that, but then knowing that the framework outlines the support that we have as educators. So knowing that there are expectations there, but also knowing that there's plenty of support to provide for us as educators to provide to, you know, excel within those expectations. Support from building administration, district administration, and even parents.
So the framework really communicates to all our stakeholders our common expectations and our priorities. But how exactly does that do that in a system like PSD that so values choice and innovation and has a multitude of different types of schools, everything from core, IB, to neighborhood schools, et cetera, et cetera. Todd, could you elaborate on how a framework works and still values all of those choices?
You know, Jen, I think system is the key word. And a lot of times as we've gone through this work together, a lot of us that have been on the task force have been asked the question, what is it and what it is not, right? And so I always think about those things to try to help explain. I think we've talked a little bit about the base for it, but you know what it is respectful of the different instructional models that we have in the system, and what it is not is an emphasis on just one type of approach or one type of theory. It is inclusive of all stakeholders. It is not just work that is put under the responsibility of just our teachers and our principals. It's a reflection of the best practices in the field. It is not just limited to the ideas in one book or one educational expert. It collects all of that together in a way that's useful for all those who work with it. And I think most of all, it's an organized blueprint for teaching and learning in this district. It is not just another initiative.
So, and to add to that, our standards-based teaching and learning framework is organized into 5 dimensions. We've been partnering with the Center for Educational Leadership out of the University of Washington. So the task force, when developing the framework, used their model, their 5 dimensions for teaching and learning as our base. But our task force also went out and looked at other research. We also looked at the great things that are already happening in Poudre School District, and so we built upon those. So I'm going to go through and briefly describe those 5 dimensions. So in no particular order, one of the dimensions is student engagement. That involves the engagement strategies as well as how we build relationships with students and design intellectual work and talk to involve the students more in their learning. The curriculum and pedagogy dimension includes strategies and supports that we organize into a plan so that students are learning the standards and they're involved in that process. Another dimension is purpose, the purpose of why we are doing what we're doing. So everything in our classrooms definitely anchors back to the Colorado academic standards, as well as in this dimension we have the expectation that each day or each lesson students are clear on what they'll learn, why they're learning it, as well as how they're going to show that they're successful. Another dimension is assessment for student learning. All of the multiple and varied ways that our teachers are checking in with students on their learning, engaging both formally and informally. This dimension looks also at those assessment results and how we're making adjustments, both teachers making adjustments in their instructional practices, as well as the students making adjustments for their learning tactics so that they can be successful. And the fifth dimension is environment and culture, which is how are we building that safe culture for our students to learn, the rituals and routines to increase student ownership, independence, even interdependence, and how we're using the physical space to facilitate learning. So all of those dimensions work together. Not one is more important than another. We actually had an instructional coach mention to us one day when we were gathering feedback that if you take away one of those dimensions, it isn't going to be as powerful of a learning experience for our students. So all the dimensions are also anchored back ultimately for that student achievement and growth, as well as ongoing professional learning for all of our educators.
So how will our standards-based teaching learning framework impact our teaching and our learning in PSD? And system-wide, how is it going to impact us? Sandy?
Yeah, I was excited to be part of the task force. It feels like I've waited my entire career for us to have something like this framework that defines us as a learning system. And keyword, we keep referring to system. But can we have that system so we are truly a whole school district rather than district of individual schools? Will that common language and the expectations lead to consistency of teaching and learning? That's our biggest hope. And then higher quality instruction, which we know is the key for student learning. So it also matters to administrators in terms of expectations, what we're looking for when we go into classrooms, when we give feedback, when we give suggestions to teachers, when we're designing professional development for our own buildings, what we're looking for among students, and are they owning their learning, and are they engaged in these classrooms? And again, the same language that we're all talking about as we're going in and out of classrooms. We have great people, we've come from different places, and so for this to define best practice and for all of us to know what it is and have this quality experience should have wide-reaching effects, I believe, within a very short time. I believe the framework is already alive in many classrooms. We're seeing it. It's visible across PSD. We will have those more consistent actions. And the end result, I hope, is increased student involvement, increased student ownership, and ultimately increased student achievement. And what could be better than that?
That's great. I agree. And I also feel I was just honored to be a part of the task force that worked on the framework. And again, as a teacher, as I mentioned before, the common expectations are just so important, and the support and the professional development that's aligned with the common expectations. And to know that this is aligned with the 5 dimensions, which is aligned to our teacher evaluation. Everything is just a beautiful framework for support for educators. And that support for us that comes at the district level, the building level, knowing that all of our professional development is aligned to what's happening within the system of the framework. At every turn, there's support for us, and we know exactly what the expectations are for us for teaching and the students for learning.
So Todd, talk to us a little bit, because the teaching learning framework is not just for educators and administrators and parents and students, but it also has expectations and priorities for the district and district office and putting systems in place. So could you talk to us about the impact that the teaching learning framework has had on us as a system and system alignment?
Yeah, sure. I think as we got closer to the end and we really knew what we were going to have, and we were eager to get rolling with it, we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that work. And when it got toward the end and we started to see form to it, I think our best hope was that it would be the context and the language across all of those systems in the district. And when I think of those, in particular, mentoring which is already a very successful model in PSD. Our professional development, also equally as successful, as well as evaluation. And so what it really meant to us was that when we have our mentoring program, when a teacher walks through the doors for the first time in Poudre School District and they work with our mentoring team and all the talented people that make that possible, they learn our system through the language of the framework. When we organize our professional development, and Kate has her team together and they go out and deliver, whether it's to teachers or to administrators, it's organized around the teaching learning framework, and that's great. And then finally, you know, and it's no secret in Colorado, we have a new evaluation model that's in place through Senate Bill 191. But for Poudre School District, also organized around the 5 dimensions and the teaching and learning framework. And I think what that does is that provides a consistent approach in coming into the district, developing your talents, and also giving you feedback on performance. And that's great for all of us. I think that alignment, I must say, in the districts I've worked in, we've never had all of those major parts aligned that way.
And I would say another key piece of that is every building chose this evaluation system because they wanted it to align with our teaching learning framework. So very powerful that we chose our own to align with this versus what the state of Colorado is doing.
Well, you know, Jen, I think it makes sense when we ask our teachers and we ask our administrators to adapt to this model, to go through professional development in this model, and we ask them to invest so much like we have in the last year or so. It's only fair that our evaluation model follows suit and we give them feedback in that area. I think, you know, we want that to be connected. Quite often there can be a disconnect between those two things, and I think in Poudre School District it's aligned nicely.
And Catherine mentioned the critical piece of support. And Kate's done an amazing amount of work with her team on support for all of us. So Kate?
Yeah, we're lucky to have the support already. We have, for the entire time I've been in Poudre School District, and even before that, we have a lot of support for everyone in the district. This does give us the chance to focus and align that support. So our professional development team is looking at and creating multiple methods and means for that support. So in addition to the job-embedded professional development happening at the schools that aligns within the framework, we'll offer classes and other opportunities for teachers. If there's a specific area that they want to grow in, they'll have that support available to them, as well as utilizing our best professional developers are our teachers. So looking to our teachers who are those model examples, they're really living and making sure that those expectations come to life for the kids every day, they can become the model and the teacher of other teachers. We also know that our educators and our community, very proactive and willing to learn on their own. We will not always just sit back and wait for someone to offer a class to us. So we've developed, many people have spent many hours to put together an online toolkit for our framework. So the online toolkit is available on the PSD homepage, both under academics as well as under focus projects. And within this toolkit, you can find the entire framework in document form or interactive form, where you can click within a dimension and find all those expectation statements for families, parents and guardians, educators, the students, the school administrators, and central office. Behind that, we have resources. Right now, we have books, articles, links to other web resources. Down the road, we'll continue to build this toolkit. Ultimately, we want to have videos, again, of our teachers, so that as a new teacher or a continuing teacher, that there's an area we want to, what does that really mean? I see these words and this expectation, but what does that look like? We'll have videos of our teachers showing that. So multiple ways to really just provide support.
Again, it's so everybody can be successful. Catherine, as a teacher leader who was involved in the task force, you're now on the ground in deep implementation with your classroom of this framework. So what can you tell us midway in the first year of implementation? How is it impacting students?
Well, it's exciting for me to see and be able to put these things into action. And I've noticed that even the smallest of adjustments for me have profound impact on student learning. One example, today I was teaching long division, and I have a sign above my learning target that tells the kids to ask themselves if how will they know they've met the target. And so we have that conversation constantly throughout lessons. And a student today during the long division lesson said, "So Miss Thompson, I'll know that I met the target when I can work out this division problem all by myself." And I said, yes. It was great.
So I think you've seen today that it really does make a difference. And I want to thank all of our guests for being here. But importantly, I would thank our audience and encourage them to go to our online toolkit and see more about this, because it is our belief that this is going to make a huge difference pre-K through 12, as everyone has the latest, greatest research on how to best do our job in multiple ways. There's lots of choices, and it doesn't stifle, rather it helps us with the latest brain research, and it really helps us give our students the very best so they can achieve and grow at the best level that we possibly can. So we would thank you for tuning in to this version of Leading for Learning, and invite you to come back again.